Okay, and I believe we are live. Just double checking here with Restream and double checking a couple of things. Okay, let me know in the chat if you can hear me all right. But I think this is working. So, assuming that this is all good, welcome to the weekly Wrangle. So, I want to mention a few things before we get started here today. Number one, the weekly Wrangle is starting up again. And every single week, what I'm doing is I'm coming out with either some sort of career topic, an interview, or in this case, a live hangout / art review where you can ask questions that relate to CGI. We can go over other people's projects and talk about what's working well, what can be improved. And really, it's just a good time to hang out and hopefully cover some topics that help you develop as a CGI artist. So, with that being said, let's switch our view to the art reviews that we have here today. And as always, feel free to say hi in the chat. This is all live here, so that should be good. Okay. So I'm going to take my screen over here, bear with me for 1 second, and take this guy over here so I can see your comments. There we go. Okay, I believe that should be good. All right, first one up here, we have Abhishek VDB, and this here is a really cool waterfall simulation that was recently shared by Side Effects. And I found this here on Instagram as well. Let's see if we can get this bigger. Sometimes Instagram is a little difficult when it comes to viewing things. So let's see if we can get it. There we go. So yeah, here's the waterfall effect. And well, let's just read some of the description here. This is about 4 to 5 months of work. Right off the bat, I can tell that this is really high quality, lots of interesting layers going on. First impression is this is one of the best waterfall sims I've personally seen. Countless broken caches, failed sims, and restarting the project nearly a dozen times. So that is definitely a well-earned render right there, I'd say. So, choosing a waterfall as my first flip simulation may have not been the most practical decision, but after months of work, I finally did it. So yeah, this being the first flip sim is pretty amazing. And this is definitely a trial by fire, so to speak, just by looking at it. So anyway, when it comes to things that are working, things that are not. First of all, let's talk about things that are absolutely working. I would say that the haze we see right here and the atmosphere and the scale is nailed. It's awesome. It feels cinematic. It feels like everything is being pushed towards the center. And really, in order to get that sense of scale, you need to have depth. And depth is often accomplished by using light to guide you into the frame. So we can see here that the light is primarily on the waterfall, which is where it should be, but the sides are darkened like this as well. And so it just creates these areas that allow us to, focus in our attention in certain spots here. We can really see it right here. The other thing that does this are the layers of volumetrics. So we have clouds in the foreground, we have mist in the foreground, and we have layers. We have this rock layer, and then basically the more you can create super up close, medium distance, medium large distance, and then really large distance away, the more you can get those layers of depth, the bigger the scene is going to feel. And this is really a great example of that, how we have mist that's right up to the camera, the rocks are really close, and then further back we end up hitting the waterfall. So compositionally, this to me feels like the right kind of depth for this shot. We also have God rays, very subtle and artistic, but they are pointing towards the waterfall, so that's a nice touch. I always recommend people go very subtle with the God rays. It usually works better that way. And yeah, I mean, just overall, really awesome render. This is actually going to be really hard to critique, so I have to really focus in here because I can tell that this is 4 to 5 months of work and it's really fantastic. Also, notice these specular highlights on the rocks. It really just makes it feel detailed, kind of like it's almost glistening with misty water, which is really cool. And yeah, anyway, it's not just about the waterfall, it's about the whole environment, and we can really see that right here, which I appreciate. So, looking at this waterfall, the transition zones are pretty seamless for the most part. If we just look at here, we have our main water flip simulation. We have it then transitioning into the tendrils that almost becomes like a smoke simulation at a certain point. It looks like smoke. And then we have a fair amount of, I think, spray potentially in there. But yeah, all in all, the transitions are very smooth. The one thing that I can see, and it's very subtle, is if you look at the top of the water here at the foam right before it falls off the edge, that to me does feel a little bit fake, I guess. A little bit less realistic. Now, depending on reference, that could be very realistic. And it doesn't look bad at all, so let me make that clear. But these little white water streaks, it just, I guess it might feel a little bit too clean, like the lines are a little bit too crisp in CGI for like the borders of where that foam is. It's not bad, and I just want to reiterate that this is, I really have to try hard to critique this one. But yeah, that's probably one of the main things I could see right off the bat here. The other thing is that in the foreground, if we take a look at the mist, like down here, just for a brief second, it looks like I'm seeing a turbulent noise tendril kind of, you know, lash out for a second or something like that. Again, really picky and not something that is a big deal of any kind. But, I don't know, perhaps a little bit more detail in that foreground mist. Maybe that could be an area. Overall, gotta say, this is one of the most polished sims I've seen, especially probably the most polished sim for someone's first flip project. So, you know, congratulations on this one. This is, the name's right here actually. This is Dave Metzger from Disney. So yeah, there you go. Great job, Dave, if you're watching. This is fantastic. Okay, let me double check the chat over here, make sure we're good. Okay, yeah, we're doing good. All right, so moving on here. Let's go to the Earth explosion. So this one was done by Nazar, and this, let's just take a look here, and we'll go full screen with all of this right here. All right. Let's check out the breakdown here too. Cool stuff. Shockwave is nice. All right. So first impressions. Again, another great sim. I like how the explosion here has multiple layers. It has like a whole development that happens. And actually, we can try playing this in slow motion here. If we go to playback, and let's just do this at 0.25. Let's see what this looks like in slow-mo. And notice how when the explosion happens, there's going to be layers to all of this that happen as well. So it kind of caves in, Then we have the initial explosion, we have the flash of lights, and then we have the follow through. So let's take a look at that explosion again and try to recognize the different layers that are happening when it explodes. Cave in, debris flies out first, and then the flash develops, and then on the other side of that flash, we're hit with a new element, which is the shock wave, and then we see all of the debris scattering around like this. So a really nice way to layer your explosions, and just something to think about in general. If you are working on explosions, what is the sequence of events? What are the different layers that happen during that initial impact? That's something to, again, just be really aware of. And in this case, I think it works pretty well. Now, to be honest with you, I don't like how the earth sags in right there. It kind of feels like it got dented a little bit. Like you took a sculpt tool and ZBrush and just kind of, carved right into it. But in general, I mean, if you were to just have perhaps this crack develop or something a little bit more, I think that's probably one thing I would change. I would try to have this crack reveal itself a little bit more gradually instead of just being already fully there. So if you can have these things kind of jet out and have more anticipation, that I think could make this feel more dramatic. As far as the crack shapes themselves, or as far as these shapes go, I just don't feel like they're detailed enough, and I feel like it makes the earth feel smaller because we have these large details and we don't have anything small that is, coming out of these tendrils. So I think because this is just a very kind of broad shape overall, it makes the earth feel smaller, and that doesn't really help with the scale in this situation. I do like how there's a glow up. I'm not a huge fan of this texture. It looks like some kind of noise was put right there. Again, I would really try to focus on how can you rethink of this crack that's happening in the earth, and how can you get it so that it cracks and then it has all these details that jet out from there. I think that would make for a really interesting way to have a better texture, create more anticipation, and just layer this whole thing a little bit better here towards the beginning. So this happens. We have the debris shoot out, and then it explodes, and then we have that shockwave. Shockwave is really cool. I like these details along here. It's kind of this like net shaped thing, which is nice. And then just looking at all of these debris, and then looking here at the earth, it looks like we lost our textures right there. It's almost like this is a charred iron ball of some kind. And so I do think that right here, it loses a little bit of reality. And also the camera shake is nice. I just want to point that out right here. But we have that, the debris out here. It's kind of molten debris. And then it cuts. I do like that cut. It's very dramatic. But it's going to cut before you notice that the earth textures are gone. I think another thing as well, let me just go forward here a bit, is that we have this black smoke, but I don't know if it really would be like a black smoke if this was the earth and this was all the ocean water that was going out. So I think that you might want to, or in this case, it might be good to explore different shading options for the smoke. Maybe have something so that the smoke is different colors and you can layer areas where the ocean was versus where the earth was, things like that. But pretty cool. And then let's go to the breakdown and just look at the sim from here. Okay, so one of the first things that stands out, and let me just move my screen right there, is if we look at the VDB section, or we look at not the VDB, look at the RBD section right here, we could see that this uses a Voronoi fracturing, and while that is nice for the small pieces, I almost never recommend that for larger pieces just because it looks like a Voronoi fracture, if that makes sense. We could see these big old chunks right here, and it just has a hard time preserving the scale properly, I find. Especially with the new MPM stuff, you can get a lot of small, detailed scale things in there, and that might be good in this case. Like the more small details can be present in this kind of sim, the bigger the earth is going to feel, and I think the more you're going to capture that scale properly. But we have that. We have the volume right here, the shockwave, fiery crust. Let's go forward a little bit. I do like the emission on that. It adds lots of layering to all of this debris, which is nice. Yeah, and then we have all of that. So all in all, a really cool project, really dramatic. I would say the biggest thing that would take this up to the next level is just working on this beginning anticipation moment, trying to add more detail, trying to get away from using this textured noise area in this dented earth. I think there's many different things you can do right here to make it feel large in scale, while at the same time more detailed and have more anticipation. But this is a really good usage of layers, especially during that explosion moment right here. And yeah, all in all, I think that this is really cool. So, great job. Nice project here, Nazar. All right, how we doing here in the chat? Let me know if you're watching. Just go ahead and type something out, because I want to make sure that this is all working. It's been a minute since I did a live stream here, so let me know if you're there to make sure that this is all going properly right now. But if I just double check the YouTube here, I think things are working. But let me double check real fast. So we go here. Bear with me for 1 second here, guys. It looks like it's kind of frozen on my end. So I want to make sure that we are not frozen here with our live stream. Okay. Stream is looking good. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Ruben. Yep, I double checked here on YouTube. It looks like we're good. Okay, awesome. So we are still up and running. Let's move on to the next one here. This is the modeler logo animation, and this was done by Philip. So, and before we watch this, let's read the description here. It says, this project explores mechanical modeling, rigging, and animation, focusing on a multi-legged robot with a procedural, flexible structure. The design allows for experimenting with various joint and limb configurations while maintaining full motion control. Rigging and animation were done using KineFX for its granular, layered approach. So yeah, that being said, let's check it out. Awesome. That's a really cool animation. Not sponsored by Modeler, by the way. Although it's a fantastic plugin. Yeah, so just looking at this animation, I love this robo dude. It's really super cool. And being that this is for the Modeler plugin, the model is really awesome as well. We have these hydraulics, these really nice organic shapes, you know, while at the same time being mechanical, made of iron. We have all these little dudes as well. So this is awesome. The camera movements, the lighting. We have the light inside those fins there. Really awesome stuff. Yeah, so again, one of the very difficult things to critique here. This is looking great. Let's start by talking about things that are working well. First thing that's working well is the composition of the camera being close to the ground The lighting is really impressive. We have animated lights here that start things off. Kind of like you turned on a light switch and then all these things happened in the environment to reveal something. We always talk about interacting with the environment, and this is a great example of we could have just had the lights on, but instead what happens here is that we're thinking about someone entering the room. We're thinking about what's happening before someone encounters this scene. And it's not just showing what's there in the scene automatically, it's creating a reveal moment, it's integration. And when you integrate yourself into your scene as an artist, it's going to help the viewer integrate themselves as well. And that's just a very subtle little thing that you don't think about, but when you see the lights turn on, you're in that room a lot more as opposed to the lights already being on because you have this animation. Anyway, that's just one thing that is kind of subtle but makes a big deal here. So we have these robots. They're kind of like cockroaches that scurry away, which is cool. And one thing I like about this moment right here as well is that we have this highly detailed model back there, which I'm sure took forever to model and to rig and animate, but it's kind of blurred out. And that's a really hard thing to do when you spend so much time working on CGI elements. But instead, the decision is made to create the focus right here on this top of the robot that's about to be revealed. And so I just want to point that out, that even though you might spend a long time working on elements of your environment, it's still all about the cinematic shots. And sometimes that means you're going to have to blur out things that, are highly detailed in the background. Anyway, let's keep going. So this goes up. We have a really cool cloth simulation happening. It all kind of flies off to reveal this guy. Again, great lighting all throughout. As soon as the lights really turn on, I also like how everything is like really bright. It's almost like oppressively bright. We're not clipping, but it almost feels like if I was in that room that I'd have to squint my eyes a little bit because the lights are just really intense. But what that does is it creates a kind of a cool vibe, honestly. So, I don't know. I think that's really cool. Looking at the texturing here and just all of this, look at this area where the metal was soldered onto the top. I mean, just lots of tiny details here. The texturing is awesome. One area that I do think could be improved is this cloth simulation. I think that it just feels very cardboardy, if I'm being honest. Now, it's not bad, and I guess you could make an argument that maybe that's the intent here, to have a more stiff cloth happening. But I just feel like it's a little bit too stiff for my liking, personally. And yeah, just a minor critique if I had to pick a bone here. But honestly, that could just be personal preference. But all of this reveals, I love how all the different arms come out here. And you know what's really cool about all of this as well is that we have these like hydraulics and just a lot of complexity in the way that things look in all of this here. So we have these things fold out. We have these arms that are folding out, kind of like a Transformers effect in a way. And I'm just looking here at this arm to see if it actually fits in there or if there's like a bunch of intersecting geometry. Probably a lot of it's intersecting, but you really can't tell because the motion blur covers it up. And what's cool is that all of these things reveal in different stages. So when the arms unfold, let's just try to play this in slow motion and pay attention to those arms to see how that unveils itself. Yeah, it has this like staggered robotic feel. So it's, that's another thing in your animations as well, is you don't always want to have this smooth tangent for everything. Sometimes you want this kind of, janky, kind of stuttered animation in a way, and that's exactly what these arms do. It makes it feel more mechanical, makes it a bit more dramatic as well. So let's take a look at this. Yeah, it kind of like swings over. It's kind of like almost clanking a little bit. I can imagine that. All these different wires, like these wires too. Look at how those wires just extend, and then, yeah, just really great stuff here. I'm not sure if that's using vellum or what that is doing. Could just be rigged that way too. But yeah, really impressive stuff. I mean, this is, I'd say, top-notch modeling, rigging, animation. It looks really awesome. And again, what a cool logo intro here for Modeler. Like, wow. Also, look at this moment right here where we have these eyes, like it's like a little spider beetle, and it really just it makes it even cooler when the lights go out again. So anyway, I could spend a lot of time geeking out on all of this. There's so many layers of complexity and things that are going on that this is definitely, I think, a great render to learn from. So many good things happening right here. So all in all, really fantastic and well done here, Philip. Okay, there's one more I want to go through. And this one's a little less complex, but it caught my eye because I thought it was really cool. This one's called Coffee Break. So we got that little dude. There he goes. There it is. Now, one of the reasons why I love this is because this is a really great orientations experiment, and we actually do this exact thing in Houdini Principles. So if you go to the Houdini Principles course page at CG Forge and you go to the quaternions and matrices chapter, we have an exercise that's like this where you have a distance-based look at happening using quaternions. And I just like the idea of a little coffee dude just running through a maze, and then everyone stops for the coffee. It just has a bit of a personality to it. Like, we're all hanging out, and then all of a sudden, someone enters the room, and everyone just stares. Which is kind of fun. So even if you don't have... And that's actually something cool to recognize about that, because even if you have a scene, and let's say that you don't have like any main characters, but you still want to give it personality and life, you can do that with animation. It doesn't always have to be a character, and it doesn't always have to be, you know, something that, is like a character in order to have personality. And that's exactly what's happening with the keyboard icons here, or the keyboard, things. So one thing I'm curious about is it looks like all of these keyboard buttons have enough space to rotate. So if they do rotate, they're not going to be intersecting with each other. That's one thing that I was curious about. But yeah, it looks like we're doing pretty good with that. And anyway, really cool. Another thing that I want to point out that's great about this is you can take your Houdini experiments and turn them into a story. So let's say that you were making an experiment like this, trying to explore quaternion rotations, and you can do that with spheres and with the test geometry in Houdini, but all it takes is just a little bit of extra shading, a little bit of extra imagination, maybe some modeling here and there to make a story out of it, and maybe it adds a day or two to your overall R&D projects, but it's kind of worth it, especially over time when you end up with all these cool little stories and experiments that highlight your learning journey in Houdini. So just want to point that out. If you're in the middle of experimenting with different things in Houdini, try to consider figuring out that R&D and then using it creatively in some kind of practical way. I think that this is a great example of doing just that. Okay, so yeah, no real big critiques. I really see this as a great kind of mini project, right? And yeah, let's take a look at the water in there real quick, or the coffee. Yeah, coffee works just fine. It doesn't need to be fluid simulated. You can just have a noise and sops or something that's going on it, and that totally works in this stylized scene. So yeah, all in all, great job here, Shirzad, and thanks for sharing. All right, so that does it for today. In the future, be sure to watch out for other live streams just like this. I'm going to be basically rotating between industry topics, that's like a monologue that I put together, interviews, and then live art reviews just like this. And let me know in the future as well if you'd like your project to be reviewed. You can always send an email to tyler@cgforge.com. And if you have any constructive thoughts or comments along the way, I'm all ears. And we'll have a good time with these art reviews going forward here into the future. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic